retaining screws from the bottom of the chassis. Disconnect and release the wireless WAN antenna cables from the cable guide. Turn the system over and open the cover. Remove the 3 retaining screws from the top of the keyboard bezel. Disconnect and release the wireless LAN antenna cables from the cable guides. Disconnect the touchpad connector from the system board. Carefully use a non-conductive tool to unsnap the keyboard bezel around the edges and remove it. Feed the antennas through the openings in the keyboard bezel. Carefully snap the keyboard bezel to the bottom cover. Connect the touchpad connector to the system board. Route the wireless LAN antenna cables through the cable guides. Install the 3 retaining screws to the top of the keyboard bezel. Turn the system over and install the 15 retaining screws on the bottom of the chassis. Remove the single retaining screw. Lift the Bluetooth daughter card from the connector on the system board. Lower the Bluetooth daughter card on the connector on the system board. Install the single retaining screw. Remove the 2 retaining screws. Pull the I/O subcard away from the chassis to remove it. Insert the I/O subcard in its opening on the chassis and secure it to the connector on the system board. Install the 2 retaining screws. Disconnect the speaker connector from the system board. Remove the 4 retaining screws. Release the cables from the cable guides. Remove the speakers. Lower the speakers into position in the chassis. Install the 4 retaining screws. Route the cable through the guides. Connect the speaker cable to the system board. Tape the cables to secure them in place if needed. Disconnect the thermal fan assembly connector from the system board. Loosen the 4 screws in ascending order. Screw 1, 2, 3, and screw number 4. Lift the thermal fan assembly from the system board. Carefully lower the thermal fan assembly onto the system board, covering the microprocessor. Tighten the 4 screws in ascending order as illustrated. Connect the thermal fan assembly connector to the system board.